everybody! Over the course of the past few weeks, we have been looking at Gruul Aggro in Pioneer. We've looked at deck tech, overall strategies of the deck, card choices in the deck. We've looked at a sideboard guide and had a sideboard with Gruul Aggro against the top 10 most popular decks in Pioneer. And we've looked at different nuances and play patterns that you need to know with the deck if you're going to play the deck. And so this is a big deep dive of all those videos combined, and I hope you enjoy. So this is Gruul Aggro. It's actually really close to the standard version of the deck because there's so many good cards that were printed in the standard. It's kind of like a mouse aggro deck, comboed with all these aggressive cards as well. So let's just go through the 1-drops. I'm just going to go in mana cost order. So we have Burst Lightning. Burst Lightning is great shock, great removal. It also can be kicked later in the game for a little bit extra damage for that last push. Heartfire Hero is a 1-mana 1/1 mouse that is relevant. With Valiant, when it becomes the target of spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it. When it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. So very good alongside pump spells or, things like that with the Valiant. Kimono Faces Kakazan is just an incredible aggressive card. It's a saga. On the front side, it says on the first chapter deals 1 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker they control. Its chapter 2 is the next creature spell you cast this turn enters with additional +1/+1 counter. And its third chapter is it flips into a 2/2 haster, where if the creature dealt damage this turn by a source you control would die, exile it instead. It does everything our deck wants. We're playing 4 Monastery Swiftspear, which is very good alongside non-creature spells, which is also good alongside these pump spells, what we already talked about is good with Heartfire Hero. We're playing 3 Reckless Rage. One, because we can target our own creatures like Heartfire Hero and Emberheart Challenger to be able to get their triggers and kill something the opponent has. But also we can Reckless Rage alongside Swiftspear, and the prowess trigger will resolve before Reckless Rage resolves and it kills things. It's also really good alongside Screaming Nemesis to deal an additional 2 damage to the opponent and make sure they can't gain life. Reckless Rage just works in this deck really well. I'm playing a Thud as an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice a creature. It deals damage equal to sacrifice creature power to any target. So this is a way to fling. Essentially very good alongside pump spells like Monstrous Rage, which for some reason we skipped. Pump spells, but also especially superty duperty good alongside Heartfire Hero because it essentially deals double its power to the opponent because you also get the Heartfire Hero trigger. Speaking of Monstrous Rage is our primary pump spell. As a 1-mana target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Create a monster roll, a token attached to it, which gives +1/+1 and trample. Also, because it's a spell that targets things, it triggers Heartfire Hero and Emberheart Challenger, which we'll talk about in just a second. Gives trample so you can trample over stuff. Kind of protects because it buffs up their butt and triggers prowess and triggers Valiant, all that stuff. Playing 2 Bushwhack, not to fix our mana, but just a 1-mana fight card because you target your own creature. So again, it triggers Heartfire Hero and Emberheart Challenger. And we're playing 2 Snakeskin Veil to fight against other removal. 1-mana, put +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, gains hexproof till end of turn. We've mentioned Emberheart Challenger already a few times. It's a 2-mana 2/2 with haste and prowess. When it becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn, you may play that card. So it allows us to dig through our deck. It also has prowess in and of itself. It combos with all these cards we're already playing because of Valiant, because of Heartfire Hero. It's just very good. We're playing 3 Manifold Mouse. Is a 2-mana 1/2 with Offspring. And at the beginning of combat in your turn, target mouse you control gains your choice of Double Strike and Trample until end turn. 99% of the time you're going to select Double Strike. But notice Heartfire Hero and Emberheart Challenger are both mice. And Valiant is not heroic. Valiant doesn't care that it's an ability. So when Manifold Mouse gives Heartfire Hero or Emberheart Challenger the Double Strike, then it either gets a +1/+1 counter for Heartfire Hero, or you get to exile the top card with Emberheart Challenger. Both extremely good, and you can do it every single turn. We're playing 2 Innkeeper's Talent because again it targets, so it triggers these things, pumps up our guys, makes them hard to answer, and puts even more +1/+1 counters, which is very good. Alongside Heartfire Hero, very good alongside Snakeskin Veil. We're playing 2 Questing Druid to be able to dig through our deck even more, but also it's just a really grindy card. And we're playing 3 Screaming Nemesis, which we've already talked about how it combos with some other cards in our deck, but also it's just so difficult to block and just needs a super clean answer. Being a 3/3 for 3 with haste, when is dealt damage, deals that much damage to any other target. If a player is dealt damage this way, they can't gain life for the rest of the game. So good. As far as our lands go, we have the basic red-green lands, some basic mountains, Soken's-On, things you should already know what they do. We're playing 2 Den of the Bugbear for our man lands. 4 mana, man's up to become a 3/2 red goblin creature. When it attacks, create a 1/1 red goblin that's attacked and attacking. And then we're playing a Ramanap Ruins. It's just another way to get the additional last few damage. We can pay 4 mana and sacrifice a desert and deals 2 damage to each opponent. This is the only desert, but so really it's pay 4 mana and we get to sacrifice itself to deal 2 damage to each opponent. So we are attacking, we are protecting our creatures, we're pumping up our creatures. That is essentially what's going on in the main deck, with a few cool combos with things like Reckless Rage and Manifold Mouse. As far as the sideboard goes, we're playing 2 Torch the Tower, partially as additional removal for the aggressive decks, but playing specifically Torch the Tower is important because it exiles, so other Heartfire heroes aren't triggered, it gets rid of Phoenix forever, stuff like that. Playing Magebane Lizard for combo decks and like Phoenix, because it's a 1/4 for 2. When a player casts a non-creature spell, it deals damage equal to that player equal to the number of non-creature spells they cast this turn, so it really punishes them for casting a lot of the same spell every turn. Playing 2 Pyroclasm for these aggressive decks, because Pyroclasm frankly isn't that good against us. Most of our creatures survive it. 2 Urbrass Forge for the slower decks. It's a 3 mana artifact. At the beginning of your combat in your turn, put an oil counter on Urbrass Forge. Then create an X1 red Phyrexian horror creature token with trample and haste, where X is the number of oil counters on Urbrass Forge. Sacrifice that token at the beginning of the next end step. We're playing 2 Hazoret of the Fervent for decks that are really good at answering what we're doing, and we end up with no cards in hand and are just totally burnt out, which is a 5/4 for 4 indestructible haste, can't attack unless you have 1 or fewer cards in hand, and you can discard a card. So like, once you get over 4 or 5 lands, you can discard the lands by paying 3 mana and dealing 2 damage to each opponent. We're playing 3 Pick Your Poison, decent 1 mana artifact and enchantment hate, really good against flyers, see like Archfiend of the Dross and stuff like that, or like Fable the Mirror Breaker, whatever. And then we're playing Grafdigger's Cage for our graveyard hate. So this is the Gruul Aggro deck in Pioneer. As far as cards in the sideboard goes, Torch the Towers for things like Phoenix and aggressive decks. Magebane Lizard also for Phoenix, but also really good against like Hidden Strings and combo decks and control decks. Pyroclasm really good against other aggro decks. Urbrax Forge good against really anything that's going long and answering our primary game plan. Same thing with Hazoret the Fervent. Pick Your Poison is good artifact, enchantment hate, and also like demon hate. The Grafdigger's Cage really good against like Enigmatic Incarnation, Phoenix, Graveyard hate, stuff like that. So the most popular deck in Pioneer is Rakdos Midrange. Against Rakdos Midrange, we're bringing in Urbrass Forge, Hazoret the Fervent. I'm also a fan of Pick Your Poison because a lot of them are playing Unholy Annex and Blade of the Oni and FOMO and things like that. They can just randomly hit a lot of cards. We're going to be taking out Bushwhack. Because of all the removal in our opponent's deck, we can't reliably use it. Also going to be taking out Thud for similar reasons. Same thing with Innkeeper's Talent. We just need to make sure their removal isn't insane. And then shave in on Reckless Rage because all this stuff is just better. Like, I'd rather have as many creatures as possible and be able to answer what they're doing as much as possible. So sideboard against Rakdos Demons, Rakdos Midrange, whatever you want to call it. The second most popular deck is it Phoenix? We're going to bringing in Torch the Tower because it answers the Phoenix forever. Bring in Magebane Lizard to punish them for casting multiple spells, and Grafdigger's Cage so they just can't Phoenix combo us. Going to be taking out a bunch of removal, especially removal that doesn't do well. They also have a ton of removal, so we're going to be sideboarding really similarly. Taking out Bushwhack, taking out Thud, and taking out all the Reckless Rage. The rest I'm pretty happy with, and that's how we sideboard against Is It Phoenix. The third most popular deck is Niv-to-Light. Against Niv-to-Light, we want to stick to our primary game plan, but removal is generally kind of bad, especially Bushwhack and Thud, which is awful to say. And there are some lines where they just like wipe the board a whole bunch. So bringing in Hazoret and Urbrass Forge is pretty solid. I'm not a fan of Pick Your Poison because it can be a little corner case. I'm just gonna bring out a Reckless Rage. Reckless Rage can be okay because it hits Omnath and whatnot, but there's a lot of cards in the deck that Reckless Rage does not hit, like Alenda or really scary things like that. But that's how I'm going to sideboard against Niv-to-Light. The fourth most popular deck is the Hidden Strings deck. Against Hidden Strings, we're bringing in Magebane Lizard just to make it difficult for them to combo. We're going to be bringing in Grafdigger's Cage, so Leer does nothing. And then it's really important that we take out all of our removal, and Snakeskin Veil, so they don't have a lot of removal. And I'm a fan of Pick Your Poison because it takes out 9 lives. And then because we're just going to be playing everything we possibly can, 1 Hazoret is totally fine. That's how I sideboard against Lotus Field combo. The fifth most popular deck is Selesnya Company. Against Selesnya Company, we're bringing in Torch the Tower because it cleanly deals with a lot of our opponent's deck. We're going to bring in Pyroclasm. It cleanly deals with about half of the cards, which is totally fine. Pick Your Poison is very good against the deck as well because a lot of the things are flyers, and Grafdigger's Cage stops Collecting Company. We're going to be bringing out Innkeeper's Talent It's just a flex slot that is meh. We're gonna be bringing out Questing Druid. We really don't care about the game going long. We just need to beat them as fast as hecking possible. Gonna be taking out a Burst Lightning because it doesn't super cleanly deal with a lot of the deck. And then 2 Manifold Mouse, just because I need them to be threats on their own. So that's how I'm gonna sideboard against Selesnya Company. The 6th most popular deck is the Azorius Flash deck. It's mostly spirits, but we're calling it Azorius Flash. We're bringing in Torch the Tower, and we're bringing in Pick Your Poison, because most of the things are flying. They're not playing a ton of removal, so bringing out Snakeskin Veil is totally okay. And taking out Innkeeper's Talon is fine, along with a single Bushwhack. So that's how I'm going to sideboard against Azorius Flash. The 7th most popular deck is 5-color Enigmatic Incarnation. Against this deck, we are bringing in Grafdigger's Cage, so Enigmatic does nothing. We are bringing in Pick Your Poison because they are mostly enchantments. And then other than that, they're kind of a control deck, so I like bringing in Urbrass Forge and Hazoret. A lot of the removal is just bad, so we're bringing all of that out, along with the Innkeeper's Talent because they have a bunch of removal, and so we need as many creatures as possible, and so this is how I'm sideboarding against 5-color Enigmatic. The 8th most popular deck is Azorius Humans. Against Azorius Humans, we're bringing in Torch the Tower. We are bringing in Pyroclasm, and because we want to be killing as fast as possible, we're bringing out Innkeeper's Talon and Questing Druid, and that's how I'm going to sideboard against Azorius Humans. The 8th most popular deck is Azorius Control. Against Azorius Control, we're bringing in Magebane Lizard, maybe? There we go, Magebane Lizard. We are bringing in Urbrass Forge and Hazoret the Fervent, and removal needs to hit the bench as much as possible. Innkeeper's Talent isn't doing anything either, but is better than removal, so we're going to split on that, and that's how I'm going to sideboard against Azorius Control. And the 10th most popular deck is the Mono Red deck. Against Mono Red, we're bringing in Torch the Tower. We are bringing in Pyroclasm for obvious reasons, and we're bringing out the slow cards. That's how I'm sideboarding against Mono Red. First off is remembering Valiant and Heartfire Hero and Emberheart Challenger. There's a ton of ways to trigger Valiant and making Heartfire Hero much bigger so that it can attack for much more, and then when it dies, deal that much more damage. And Emberheart Challenger allows you to kind of become a Howling Mine. There's a lot of ways to trigger Valiant. Some of the more obvious ways would be like Monstrous Rage, would be Reckless Rage, would be Bushwhack, would be Snakeskin Veil, just as spells to make Heartfire Hero bigger and to draw, or not draw cards, but exile cards so you can play them with Emberheart Challenger. But also Manifold Mouse allows you to target every single turn without spending a card or spending any mana, and same thing with Innkeeper's Talent. So remember those cards, and capitalizing on Heartfire Hero growing and getting more cards off of Emberheart Challenger every turn is a super important aspect of this deck. Next up is Screaming Nemesis. So Screaming Nemesis obviously makes it hard to block, being able to deal damage to the opponent, make sure they don't gain life, but also remember that you can Reckless Rage Screaming Nemesis to deal 2 damage to Screaming Nemesis, 4 damage to something else, which means that something else likely dies, and then that 2 damage that is dealt to Screaming Nemesis can also be dealt to a creature or to the opponent and make them not gain life. So Reckless Rage can end up being like a 2-for-1/3-for-1 when used in combination with Screaming Nemesis. And similar thing with Burst Lightning. If you're just going to Burst Lightning your opponent, you might as well Burst Lightning the Screaming Nemesis and make it so they can't gain life for the rest of the game. Speaking of Reckless Rage, it's important to remember that nearly every creature we have, Reckless Rage won't kill when we deal damage to it. Heartfire Hero, as long as it's already been triggered once in a previous turn, the Heartfire Hero trigger will resolve before Reckless Rage resolves, and so it won't die. Monastery Spear Prowess will trigger before Reckless Rage, so it won't die. Same thing with Emberheart Challenger. Questing Druid's in a similar vein as Heartfire Hero. As long as it's been triggered once, then it's totally okay. And we've already talked about Screaming Nemesis. And so Reckless Rage becomes a reasonably unconditional removal spell as long as you fulfill those very easy conditions. Also, most red-green decks are running some amount of Thud. This is mostly to capitalize on Monstrous Rage, off of making a creature very big, dealing a bunch of damage, and then thudding and destroying our opponent. But it's extra good with Heartfire Hero. If we have a big Heartfire Hero, maybe we pump it up with a Monstrous Rage and have a bunch of triggers over the course of the past few turns. We attack our opponent, maybe it's 7 power, we deal 7 damage, and then we can Thud to fling that Heartfire Hero at the opponent, deal another 7, trigger Heartfire Hero, deal an additional 7. It is just ridiculous, and it's important to remember that flinging Heartfire Hero, or really flinging any card in our deck that's been pumped up, is very powerful. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social media. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.